Here it is. Yes. That means a whole week has passed? Yes, it is. Are you using this to keep time? Because I am. What is this? The come up. It's the come up. Goo 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 goo. It's the come up. It's the come up. Yeah. Hi everyone. Welcome back to my Chicago apartment. I'm kind of in a different position now. I did some cleaning. I rearranged. I'm hoping that by rearranging the space, I can open my mind, and I can also get rid of whatever bugs were in here messing with our feed last time. It's looking great today. We're gonna be happy. We're gonna be. Reminder: I am back in Chicago, no longer in Omaha. I promise I'm fine. There's just, we're in the city. We just have other things to deal with. Thank you to those folks that have been watching. It's been super fun to hear your feedback. Keep commenting, keep liking, keep subscribing. If you have a Gmail, you have a YouTube account, so go ahead and over to YouTube and subscribe. And yeah, just I want you to keep being a part of these conversations. I think it's super fun and exciting. And today I get to chat with someone that I appreciate so much. Her name is Sheri Flanders, and she is a Chicago actor, an improviser, a teacher. She's a critic. She's a dope person. She's just awesome. I like Sheri a lot. So I thought it would be cool to chat with her today about what she's doing in the pandemic and how her world's feeling. And let's just stop talking to me and let's bring on Sheri. Hello.
Hey.
You hear the thunderous applause of the audience. Yeah. How are you?
Good. Can't figure out the singing, but it's fine. It's
Aha! You made it.
Yes.
How's
I'm doing well.
How's your quarantine going?
It's chill. It's chill. It was weird for us because we were out of the country. Me and my husband, we were traveling in India for 3 weeks.
Right.
And so then we got back in the States, and then it was kind of like Night of the Living Dead. So, because there was nobody on the streets, and everybody's pandemic, and so we were just okay, life has changed. So it's just been this weird, yeah.
It all hit though while you were abroad. What was that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was interesting because I think everyone was still in that a thing's going on and it hasn't affected us. But in India, they were initially oh, we're fine. We've closed the borders to China. And then I think as it spilled to Italy, they started realizing, oh, we're not safe. And so it was interesting because in India, you don't really take yourself around. You have to have drivers. You cannot drive in India. It's a thing. It's crazy there. Right. And so in terms of traffic, but so they went initially from we're safe to kind of being hey, you Americans are probably going to get us sick. And wow. I was fair.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting having that perspective of realizing oh my God, I am potentially putting someone at risk. That's a lot.
Wow. That's amazing.
So we saw it kind of break in real time.
So when you were getting back, did you have issues coming back, or what was that process like?
Yeah. Actually, what happened was the day that Trump went online and said that he was going to shut borders, we had a bunch of people call us and say, hey, you should get back into the States before you can't anymore.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so we canceled our flight and got out early.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Happy you're safe. Happy you're here with us tonight. So, I mean, you mentioned your husband. You two are funny people together and super exciting.
We are.
So let's talk about Flanders Consulting and what does that mean? What's your comedy duo?
Okay, well, actually, Flanders Consulting is our business, so that's separate from the comedy duo, but we kind of do everything together. But Josh, he has actually been in nonprofits for about 15 years, 20 years now. And so, yeah. So we started a consulting business, and then later on, we got into improv. And so then we also started performing together. So Flanders is our duo. We write sketch shows. We have a good time. It's amazing. In the corporate side of things, we teach corporate improv workshops and then also traditional consulting for nonprofits and for-profits.
Gotcha. So how did you kind of find improv, or how did improv find you? What was that experience like?
Yeah. It was one of those things where, in retrospect, it was kind of inevitable that I would find comedy because I'm just kind of goofy and I love goofy people. But improv actually came to us because we were writing a film script together. And we read it and we're like, oh, this isn't funny. So we went, so we decided to take classes at the Second City. And I took an improv class and I was just like, this is fun. And so I just kept with it because I just enjoy it. It's so much fun. I love being on stage. I love playing with other people. It's a good time.
When you were my teacher, I did music improv.
Yeah.
And Sheri is.
And you were so amazing. You're one of my favorite
Thank you.
students. Don't tell my other students that I said that, but it's true.
The world knows now. The world knows. No, it was a blast. And what I love so much about being in your class was I feel like it can be very intimidating in some classes to, especially like I've done improv as a kid, but like formally studying it like as an adult, like that was the first time I kind of like dipped back into it. And there, all those people who were like trained, like to have worked at so many places and do shows every weekend, and like I was like, but you were so like warm and generous, and like were really, what's kind of like your technique to like being able to go into the classroom and make everyone feel comfortable playing?
Well, for me, it's just like, A, it's fun. And then I come from the Viola School and School of Improv, and she's the mother of improv, just in case you didn't know. And she believes that anyone can do improv. So for her, it's about the experience, the enjoyment. It's not about like, are you the best improviser? But I feel like you bring out your best if you are having fun.
Yeah.
And then additionally, I would say, as a Black performer, and then having you as a Black student, whenever I have a student who is a POC, I like feel an extra like responsibility to be like, you are safe, this is a good environment for you, and give a little extra, because in the arts that is not always a thing. And so I think it's extra special to like make it a safe environment for everyone, honestly.
Yeah.
But it's just a special thing because there are so very few Black teachers in the arts. So.
Well, and it's so great to be like socially conscious like that, and that's something that you're really great at. I'm a big fan of your like political commentary and like the way that you would approach talking about the world and continuing to talk about the world, and I feel like there are conversations that people often are like, why do we keep having these conversations? Or like, why do you keep talking about it? And it's like, well, because no one is, and we need to discuss that.
Yeah.
And so can you speak a little bit about like why you think it's important for you as an artist to keep that conversation like moving forward? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it comes from an organic place. Like, I come from a family that was always political. My dad was in the Air Force. And so we were always like watching the news, following politics. I grew up understanding that what's happening out there affects me, affects us, affects the world. And, maybe I can have a little bit of influence on that and send it in the right direction. So it really just comes from just my natural instinct. Like, this is what I say, this is what I feel, this is what I see other people experiencing, and I want to see if we can get as many of us on the same page as possible.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's going to be so interesting moving forward, because I've always said for a very long time that like once, and I've said this a number of times on this show already, that like once sports like kind of was like, we're done, is when the world would it was so fast. It was within a day. But once
everybody's like, cool, football, never mind.
No, basket, no, baseball, no. Okay.
I mean, maybe tennis. Oh, okay, that's better. I propped it up with my lip gloss.
The lip gloss be popping. Lip gloss be propping.
Right? Hey, that's Fenty right there. That's Fenty.
Ooh, you got an expensive prop. That's fancy.
Hey,
But I didn't connect that entertainment would be so close behind that like kind of fall. What I think we have the benefit, like we're able to create online content, we're able to keep having conversations, and in your opinion, what do you kind of see like how does art move, like shift, and what have you seen that you've liked? What would you like to see differently, and where do you think this is an opportunity for?
Well, I love that it was just so instantaneous. The grassroots actors, performers, artists, like just mobilized immediately. Like that's just our thing. It's like we, especially like improv in that world, but anyone who is like working at a like bare bones level where we just don't need much. So we're like, we were already kind of doing this anyway,
right.
Just popping it up and getting it done. So I I think this is a really great opportunity for new voices to truly get the spotlight, because we always talk about like, oh, new voices, but new voices are really the only ones doing it right now. You know, the people who are used to all the bells and whistles and polish and the entrenched institutions are kind of taking their time, and they're like, play an old video from last season. So, they don't have that freedom to just put something up, and maybe it's a little messy and it's not perfect because they feel that they have to put forth that polished image. But that's really sometimes a prison.
Yeah. Well, and something I think is interesting is that I think the landscape in general is just going to have to morph, because I think that, a couple episodes ago I was talking to Jorge. He was talking about these financial structures of these nonprofit institutions, and then after that, the Upright Citizens Brigade in New York unfortunately had to officially close their doors, and so I think that this is kind of a wake up call for a lot of this too, about like finances and like what that looks like, and it's going to be a very interesting moment, but I think we're ready for it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if everyone's ready for it, but as consultants, that's something that Josh and I talk about with businesses a lot, and I think especially for theater, they kind of operate sometimes on a hand-to-mouth model. The same thing just that anyone would suggest to a normal person, like, hey, save some money for a rainy day. They're going to have to do that a little bit more. But specifically, I think the larger theaters who have, like, endowments and they're building, new theaters and wings and things like that. I think one thing that would really help is that when they cut those deals, they put aside an amount for salaries, and that comes with a bundle, and that's just understood that, like, you don't make a large donation without a certain percentage of that going for salaries that actually can go to the artists. And I think if we get more in that mindset of putting sustaining artists first, then you're going to have more buy-in, and then you're going to have more sustainable institutions.
Yes, starting from the bottom. Now we're here.
Yes, right? Oh, this reminds me. I want to take on the challenge of writing your theme song, because I heard that and I was like, so I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. So what's interesting is I totally. So someone else reached out, and I had a meeting about a theme song. Maybe it should be a competition. Listen, I don't know, but so I'm gonna. So I think that's.
I just want to be in the background, like.
I mean, but listen. Well, here's the thing. Like on the same vein of like creating and like being creative, this has been so exciting to me, because I've been able to talk to some of my favorite people, and like also be super creative, and like have many conversations about another creative adventure, and this is just the beginning. Like, this is something I've wanted to do for a while, so I'm hoping that we can grow and expand, and then I hope to bring people with me, and so anyway, I'm excited about this collaboration. It's okay. So pivoting just a little bit. You are also a fantastic entertainment critic, and I say fantastic specifically. You write such great stories. You write really well, and you kind of like. I feel like a lot of reviews I read sometimes, and I'm like, great, that's a recap of the play. And I didn't really need that. And so
that was in the notes.
All right, it's like, is that the director's note? It's like, what is happening? Yeah. So how did you get into critiquing art, and how did that kind of come up to be?
It was the ShyTech, the Chicago Accountability. I can't remember the acronym exactly, but the whole thing with like Hetty Weiss hit the news, and everybody was like, "We need new critics." And ShyTech put out a call for basically anyone who wanted to write to come do a review of a production at where was it? Theater Wit, I think, for Little Fish. And I was just like, well, I like to write. I can write. This clearly needs to happen. And so I just went in and did it. And then a few people read it, and they were like, would you like to write for me? And I was like, okay. And so, I mean, really, it was just that simple.
Yeah.
It wasn't really like planned.
Sure. I mean, those are the best things that happen. I mean, improv, right? You just you say yes and.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Well, and what I love so much about that, and like it's you have such a specific voice as an artist and as a person, as a Black woman.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that experience a little bit about like, I mean, and it's taken you to amazing places. Like you went to
Yeah.
Sundance and like it's
Yeah, it was so much fun.
yeah. So what
Black
is
girl
the
on the slopes.
but so like what's that kind of responsibility I guess feel like
Yeah.
to be a Black woman writing about art in Chicago specifically?
Well, I mean, it's a gift and a responsibility. So, I mean, it's a gift because like I get to see all this great theater all the time that I probably wouldn't normally see. So that right there, I'm just like I'm blessed. And then the responsibility part of it is like you said, not there are tons of great critics who aren't Black women. So this is like not to slam all the critics because I would say most of the critics are actually doing at least a decent job. But there are some in kind of some especially, but kind of that idea that like certain things are not appropriate to go in a critique. Like, like I want to normalize that. Like, yes, I can say that. Why is this cast all white? Like that's just a basic one,
Right.
or did we need this play? This play didn't need to be here. Or, did we need to revive this play? This could stay back in the archive. We've seen it 100 times with excellent casts. Let's retire it. There's so much new great work. So, I mean, they're just bringing in things that other people wouldn't see. I think also, like actually the photo that you just showed for like Kill Move Paradise.
Yeah.
That was an amazing play. I love much. But it was also the type of play where I don't think you could fully. I mean, maybe some people who like, maybe some could, but I think it would be really hard to get all the nuance in that if you were not from a Black background. I just don't think you could, or that you might miss a few things. And I know for myself as an artist, if I write something or if I perform something, it feels so good to have someone go, yes, that's it. And for me to go, yes, you got it. You got what I was trying to say. Or you at least got in the ballpark of it and not just see kind of the surface things, which can actually sometimes lead people to think the opposite of maybe what your intention was. So,
Totally. So
Yeah.
what do you kind of see as the role of the critic in general? And then how does that role change in this post-COVID society, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, I think the role of the critic, there's so many different aspects to it. I mean, just like criticizing something, it's just one tiny aspect of it. I think is a lot of it is translating it to the audience. It's being that midwife. It's like, this is what this means. Here are the greater social implications of that. This is where this sits in history compared to other things that came before, where we're shooting for in the future. And now with COVID, you probably saw my op-ed in the
Yeah.
Trib, and I think some of like CJ, our favorite Chicago critic, is kind of lagging behind in still criticizing, and now we need to shift and now document. Like this is what's happening. This is where we might go. Here's what's happening organically. This might be advantageous. This might not. But it's less of a like ranking and needing to tear anything down, because it's right now everybody has like shoots of art. It's like seeds, brand new, growing. The critics don't need to come in and like chomp it down. We need to water it, put some sun on it, nurture it so that it gets bigger and better. Because we don't know how long we're going to be in this quarantine. And this is also a time capsule of a very specific period of time. We have the vaccine tomorrow and it's over. Then we want people to be able to come back and see this is what it was. This is what we were thinking. This is why we did what we did. Like this was good, this was bad, doesn't cut it.
Yeah, I love that perspective because I feel like you hear so often in dressing rooms where actors or directors are like, I don't read reviews. They're negative, and I feel like I always read them partially because I'm very narcissistic. But but a bigger part to me is it's like I'm always hoping to find a nugget that's like, here's what I
Yeah.
experienced, and here's what we can take to this next production, or like,
Hmm.
here's what I missed, here's what didn't resonate
Hmm.
with me, and here's something that I would love to
Yeah.
see more of. So I love this perspective that you have on it. And
Yeah.
why do you think that it may become a challenge for some critics to keep that in
Mhm.
mind as they're doing their work?
Yeah. Well, I am part of the arts community. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like as an actor, I have to put it out there just as much as everyone else does. I mean, improv doesn't get as much light as traditional theater in some ways. Nobody should be in my show. But at the same time, I'm putting it up there. You know, I have to put it on the stage. I know how they feel. I know the risk. I know the reward. And most critics are not performers. And so there's a safety and there's a disconnect where they don't necessarily see themselves as an entrenched part of the community, but they are. And we should be working together, and it should be a dialogue, and we're like a network of roots. You know, we all part of this thing, this organism that's living. We're not sitting in an ivory tower somewhere, like looking down at everyone. We're part of it, and so the community survives. We survive because the community survives. You know, it's like our critiquing is coming from a place of love and nurturing, the same way your mom's like, you need to get your life together. But not but not like trying to tear you down. You know, your mother has your best interests in mind. You know,
For
it's
sure.
different.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Oh, Sherry, you're so wonderful. I just think that you're just such a light, and you're so pleasant, and like just make warm
Aw.
spaces around you. And I think that right now it's a hard time for a lot of people to continue
Yeah.
to fight and continue to have these conversations and continue to
Hmm.
push us forward in this moment. So like,
Yeah.
what are you doing to bring keep yourself
Hmm.
going? What's the joyful thing that's keeping you moving in this time?
Ah. Ooh, wow. Well, I love having the connection to people online and being able to talk shit and all of that. Oh, can I say shit? It's fine. Like I normally do. you know. I've actually started like a little garden in my apartment. So I'm like trying to grow like onions and like lettuce and like, get back to the nature as much as a city girl can. It's reading. I've actually started writing a little bit more in terms of non-critique things, obviously, because there's not so much of that.
Yeah.
I got some plays like that I'm working on, so somebody will get to criticize me one of these days.
Yeah.
And just like recommitting to the arts. My background actually, I have a degree in fashion design. So actually, with the mask craze, I like dragged out the sewing machine for the first time in a while, even though I had sworn off that life. I'll never design again, and here I am. But it actually connected me to my visual arts practice, which I did for so long, even before I got back into performance. And I had that process down to a science in a different way than I do my performance practice or my criticism practice. And so it was kind of tapping back into that like level of confidence isn't the right word, but just like when you just like know what your process is and you just have it down. Because I've been sewing since I was like, I don't know, 8 years old or something.
Right.
And so that whole thing, it's just on a different level than my other artistic practices. And it was just like, oh yeah, I forgot what that feels like. So that was very renewing for me as an artist. So yeah.
Yeah. The reconnection that's happening right now is so great.
Yeah.
It's so great. Well, Sherry, this was lovely. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here. You're amazing. Sherry Flanders, everyone. You love her. You see
You
her.
are amazing.
Thank you.
Also, I can't wait to see your musical because I didn't get to see it. So will you please put it back online or at least send me a private link so I can see it?
Oh, yeah, the To the Sea show. Yes. Yes. So okay, so actually
Put in a plug for it because
there is some development that is probably going to be happening on To the Sea. So I've been looking at a lot of different grants and creative things to like get some funds to
yes.
hopefully take the
Mm-hmm.
show and do a
Mm-hmm.
big amazing
Mm-hmm.
things with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, let's connect after this and we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Chat. Yep.
Ah, love you.
Love
Yes.
you too.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Sherry Flanders! Yes! That's so great. We love this place. We love this show. There were no technical glitches. What a good time. I'm super excited. Next week, Brian Bose. He is from Minneapolis. He is a fantastic dancer, actor, creator, singer, and he does this amazing program called Slay, and he's now doing Slay at Home. Next week's episode will be at 5 p.m. because Slay at Home happens at 6:30, which will give you some time to like get some water, get dressed, and come slay with him. So that is the show for this week. Thank you. Thank you, Sheri, for being the guest. If you like what you see, like and subscribe on YouTube. Share it with your friends on Facebook. We'll be back here next week, 5 p.m. next week with Brian Bose. Have a good one, y'all. Da 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 da. Ooh, yeah. Ow!